Those foreign troops that have violated the integrity and boundary of Kenya in Mandera, they are now fugitives of war. They must be arrested and they must be court-martialed for violating the territorial integrity of this Republic of Kenya.
The fear and panic now define daily lives of people in Mandera. The situation is worsening by the hour. Jubaland forces are building up their strength within Mandera town itself, inside Kenyan territory, literally taking over our town.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Kenyan political elite, mostly those of the Somalian heritage, mostly the Cabinet Secretary of Health in Kenya, Aden Duale, and the National Intelligence Service Director Nordin Haji have been damning quiet on the Jubaland invasion of Mandera town that has pushed out the original inhabitants of Mandera from their homes. But the question that you might ask is, why have other Cushitic leaders relegated the role of calling the government into action to only two leaders that have actually said it's high time now that we put aside our affiliation and relationship to President William Ruto so that we will defend our people, because our people always comes first. And those leaders are the two leaders from Mandera County, the Mandera Governor Mohammed Haden Khalif and the Mandera Senator Hali Roba, who yesterday broke his silence on the invasion of Mandera town. Now, this might answer your question. The relationship between the Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale and the Jubaland Forces President Ahmed Madobe. I remind you that the leader of Jubaland Forces is referred to as the president because he was elected in the Republic of Somalia as a whole has 3 countries within it. There is the Jubaland, the Somaliland, and the Somali as a country itself. So they have each region has its own president. The Somaliland has its own president. The Jubaland has its own president, who is Ahmed Madobe, who was elected in 2019 while Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was in power. Now, back in the year 2019, during the reign of President Uhuru Kenyatta, a dossier was leaked on social media on the possible fallout between the Kenyan and Somali diplomatic ties over the Kenyan government supporting the Jubaland president, or the Jubaland Forces President Ahmed Madobe. Allow me to take you down to history about 6 years ago, back in the year 2019, on what happened. Now, this is what went down. In 2019, on Saturday, 12th October 2019, a plane carrying a high-level Kenyan delegation arrived in the Somali port city of Kismayo for the inauguration of Ahmed Madobe as the president of Jubaland, a Somali federal state that borders Kenya. The whole of the Kenyan border lies alongside the Jubaland Forces territory. The majority leader, the delegation that was touching down in Kismayo port back in the year 2019 included Aden Duale, then as a majority leader in the Kenyan's National Assembly, serving as a member of parliament of Garissa Township, and the member of parliament then, Yusuf Hassan Habdi, among others. Now, the arrival of Duale and his entourage of mainly Kenyan Somalis in Kismayo broke several diplomatic protocols and ties. The delegation did not make a courtesy call to the Somali president, Mohammed Abdullahi Farmajo in Mogadishu before embarking on their journey to Kismayo, and was therefore perceived as snobbing, a sitting head of state. Now, the visit reignited fears in Somalia that Kenya is trying to assert its authority in Somalia through puppet regional leaders such as Madobe, who do Kenyans' bidding in Somalia. The visit also contravened a directive by President Farmajo that all international flights to Kismayo should first pass through Mogadishu's Aden Ade International Airport for inspection. By ignoring the directive, Duale and his delegation not only spanned an ally and a neighbor, but deepened fissures between Somalia and Kenya, two countries that already have tense relations due to an ongoing Indian Ocean maritime boundary dispute. Farah Maalim, the former deputy speaker in Kenya's National Assembly, and who serves currently as the Member of Parliament of Dadaab, had warned that the visit could damage Kenya's diplomatic relations with Somalia and with other countries in the region. He advised Kenya to cut its ties with Madobe in order to foster a healthier and more amicable relationship with the federal government of Somalia in Mogadishu and with President Farmajo. It should be noted that President Farmajo did not support Madobe's election in the Jubaland polls and had backed a candidate from his own Marehan clan for the state presidency. Sheikh Hamid Mohammed Islam, better known by his nickname Madobe, is often viewed as Kenya's man in Somalia because of the critical role he and his Ras Kamboni militia played in helping the Kenya Defense Forces KDF to push out Al-Shabaab from the port city of Kismayo in September 2012. Yet, despite being viewed as an ally of Kenya in its war against terror, Madobe is a man who has himself been associated with terrorist activities and radical elements that wreaked havoc in Somalia after the fall of the Islamic Courts Union (ICU) in 2006. It is common knowledge that Madobe was a high-ranking official of the militant Islamic group Hizbul Islam, which was formed in 2009 by Sheikh Hassan Dahir Hawiz, who has been designated as an international terrorist by the United States. Before he joined the Kenyan forces, Madobe was the governor of Kismayo in 2006. During the short and ill-fated rule of the ICU, a militant coalition of clan-based entities, business people, and Muslim clerics who sought to bring about a semblance of governance in Somalia, but which was ousted by US-backed Ethiopian forces because it was perceived as an Islamic fundamentalist group that would bring about the Talibanization of Somalia. Now, Sheikh Mohammed Islam, better known by his nickname Madobe, as I said, Madobe later joined and then defected from Al-Shabaab. Remember, Madobe later joined Al-Shabaab but defected. And here comes the point. I should remind you that a few weeks ago, the former Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Rigathi Gachagua, had alleged that President William Ruto, on his visit to Mandera, where he spent the night, he held a consultative and a business meeting between him and 3 Al-Shabaab groups, which tells you what? Madobe might have been in that meeting. Formed after the collapse of the ICU, ostensibly after protesting against its brutal methods. Now, Madobe later formed the Ras Kamboni militia to fight his former allies and to regain control over the prized port of Kismayo, which was under the control of Al-Shabaab when his militia and the Kenyan forces entered Somalia. This could have been his primary motive for collaborating with the Kenyans back then. Now, in his book, Dirty Wars, The world is a battlefield. American journalist Jeremy Scahill says that Madobe's change of heart vis-a-vis Al-Shabaab came about after he spent 2 years in an Ethiopian prison after he was captured while fleeing Ethiopian and American forces when the ICU fell out. He then became one of the new generation of US-backed warlords drawn from the rump of the Islamic Courts Union. Some observers believe that because he already knew the lay of the land and had similar objectives as the Kenyan forces to gain control of Kismayo, Al-Shabaab's economic base, Madobe was identified and probably presented himself as a natural ally of the Kenyans. That he belongs to the Ogaden clan, which has for years sought to control southern Somalia, one of the most heterogeneous regions of Somalia that is home to several clans and which is also politically dominant in northern eastern Kenya, could also have worked to his advantage. In the early part of the year 2011, prior to joining forces with Madobe's militia, the Kenyan government had plans to support Mohammed Abdi Ahmed Gadi, the former Minister of Defense, and an Ogaden from the Jubaland region to administer a potential Jubaland region authority called Azania, also known as the Jubaland Initiative. It is believed that Ethiopia, Kenyan's big brother, when it comes to regional military matters, opposed the creation of the Azania buffer zone between Kenya and Somalia as it was viewed as an Ogaden-dominated Kenyan project. It is likely that because of its propensity to support warlords in Somalia, the Ethiopian government encouraged Kenya to work with the battle-handed Madobe, whom they trusted more than the suave and cultured anthropologist Gadi, who did not command any militia in Jubaland. Now, in May 2013, less than a year after Kismayo fell to KDF, then reheated as AMISOM, and his militia, Madobe declared himself president of the self-styled state of Jubaland, which was not recognized by the central government in Mogadishu. It is believed that the federal government of Somalia had been supporting a rival group headed by Bare Haden Shire, who declared himself president of Jubaland moments after Madobe did. Despite an Ethiopian brokered agreement in August of the same year that stipulated that Madobe's interim administration should hand over the port of Kismayo to the central administration in Mogadishu within 6 months, there have been no signs of a handover to date. Somalia's fragile federalism project to create semi-autonomous states also seems to be suffering from a lack of clarity or direction. Meanwhile, 11 years after Kismayu's boots entered Somalia, there seems to be no stabilization plan for the region, nor any exit strategy for the Kenyan forces. Now, Kenya went ahead to withdraw its forces in Somalia. But let's speak about the clan politics that surround the whole issue of Somalia and Madobe. Some Somali analysts and conspiracy theorists believe that Kenya does not want to see a strong and stable Somalia because the latter would pose a threat to its own national political and economic interest. They say that Kenya seeks a weak but friendly Somalia because Kenya believes that a strong Somali state may revive aspirations for a greater Somalia that would include the ethnic Somali-dominated Ogaden region in Ethiopia and the northeastern region of Kenya. Now, there you understand it. This is what Kenyan feared, and this is what Uhuru feared. And that is why his affiliation with Madobe was far-fetched. But now, the affiliation of President William RUTO is so concrete between him and Madobe. They have an agreement. And that is why it is believed that the night that William RUTO spent in Mandera during his February tour, in the presence of one Aden Duale, Madobe was there, and some other leaders of militia groups in Somalia, including Al-Shabaab. Are we together? Now come to view it in this manner. Why is President William Ruto so quiet and so adamant on this matter? If there are people that should be taking credit of trying to deploy KDF soldiers to deal with Jubaland forces, are the Kenya Kwanza administration right now, because that might sow at them bonga points even in the upcoming general election. But they have remained adamant. They don't want to talk about it. They assume that this is non-existential threat to the people of Kenya. But remember, the Jubaland forces are extending. Another thing, the relationship between Aden Duale and Madobe is one for the books. Madobe has made Aden Duale billions of money. He has also made William Ruto billions of money through the illegal sugar trade, through the illegal rice trade, through the illegal immigrants trade, because a lot of Somalis are coming into Kenya through the porous borders that we have, the stretch of 800 kilometers border between Kenya and Somali. So now, them heading over a town to serve their own financial interest and even political interest in addition to that, it is not a big deal for William Ruto. The Kenya Defense Forces right now are salivating to kick these people out of the Kenyan borders, to remove the Jubaland forces out of Kenya. But the Jubaland forces are not scared of anything, because they know and they have it in them. They have the confidence that our president and your president are one thing. They have a deal. And you had a fighter yesterday after an expose by Standard newspaper saying that we thank Kenya for its hospitality, for giving us a place to stay in Mandera. Yet the government has not come out to defend itself against those allegations. The only people that have spoken so clearly and have said, if this means that we fall out with Ruto, then so be it, it's the governor of Mandera and the Senate of Mandera, Haliroba. Now listen to some certain sentiments made by ODM leaders today. One leader by the name of Robert Alai says, the only thing we are hearing about the Somalian Jubaland forces in Mandera is from rumors from the media, but we haven't seen any. I want to read it so that you will hear this nonsense that this man is spilling, because they are total nonsense. He says, with all the mainstream and social media, no media house can produce a single evidence of the existence of Jubaland forces in Kenya. We are listening to Kenyan politicians who have become agents of Somalia and Egypt. Sad. Now, this is the typical nonsense, and this is why Aden Duale can't speak. This is why other leaders from the Somalian heritage can't speak against the Jubaland, because they are selling a narrative that there is nothing happening in Mandera, yet the people of Mandera are being killed by stray bullets. The people of Mandera are in fear of their vehicle stepping on IEDs planted by the Jubaland forces. Imagine turning a primary school, BP1, into a military training camp. Yet, the people that the Somalian community in Kenya have looked at as the saviors of them in this republic remain so adamant and so quiet in this matter. The Chief of Defense Forces, General Charles Kahariri, was given an order to cease from sending troops to fight the Jubaland forces. Reason being, the relationship between Jubaland and Kenya makes William Ruto and Aden Duale billions and billions and billions of money. Let me ask you, you have seen Duale being faced by Shah shenanigans. But it seems he is so confident he is not going out. Because of what? Duale makes William Ruto so much money. And William Ruto cares only about his money. Odao, the people of Somalia, and I mean the people of Mandera, you must realize you are on your own. And what Ali Roba said, that it's about time if the government fails, they form their own militia groups to defend themselves from this threat of Jubaland forces taking over their land. I really concur with that, because the government is not going to intervene in this matter. For now, that's what's up. Leave a comment on the comment section. Make sure you subscribe.